They say America is the world's superpower, but what if its strength depends on 10 powerful countries not walking away? Why are these nations so critical to US survival? And what would happen if they simply said, "We're done"? One controls your smartphone parts, another could collapse the dollar overnight. Some host our troops, others feed our energy addiction. From global debt deals to nuclear chess moves, these countries hold the cards. Think the US is untouchable? Think again. These alliances aren't just partnerships, they're lifelines. Lose them, and the fallout could be massive. Let's break down the 10 countries America cannot afford to lose. Number 10. China. You probably don't think about where your phone, your laptop, or even your kids' toys really come from. But what if tomorrow they all stopped arriving? You'd be shocked how much of your daily life depends on China. This single country produces over 28% of the world's manufacturing output, more than the US, Japan, and Germany combined. From iPhones to solar panels, it's the silent engine behind American convenience. But that's just the surface. China also holds over $800 billion in US debt. That's not just paper, it's power. What happens if they weaponize trade or pull back on exports? The shelves at Walmart go empty, entire industries stall. But guess what? The real threat isn't just losing goods, it's losing control. The US relies on China more than most Americans realize. And if that thread is ever cut, the domino effect would reach every home in America. Let's move on. Number 9. Russia. Think gas prices are bad now? Imagine waking up to find they've tripled overnight. Not because of something local, but because Russia made a move. Yes, Russia. The world's second largest oil exporter, controlling nearly 10% of global crude output. But it's not just oil. It's gas, wheat, rare metals, and military muscle. During crises, one phone call from Moscow can send markets into chaos. And remember, this is the country with the largest nuclear arsenal on Earth. Yet the power they hold isn't only military. It's economic influence, regional control, and the ability to turn alliances on their head. You'd be surprised how many global deals hinge on their decisions. What if they shift completely eastward? What if they stop cooperating on space tech or cybersecurity? The US could lose key strategic advantages overnight. Now, before we go further, subscribe to the channel. That's how we keep giving you facts that open your eyes, and maybe even save your wallet. How can a country in the middle of the desert send shockwaves through Wall Street? Why does one royal decision overseas change what you pay at the pump? You're about to find out. Number 8. Saudi Arabia. What if the world's gas stations suddenly ran dry because of one decision made in a palace halfway across the world? You may not see them often in the headlines, but the country behind your fuel prices is Saudi Arabia. This desert nation isn't just sand and skyscrapers, it's the beating heart of global energy. Controlling nearly 17% of the world's proven oil reserves, Saudi Arabia is the unofficial gatekeeper of global fuel flow. And guess what? A single production cut from them can send oil prices through the roof. It's happened before, and it can happen again. But it's not just barrels of oil, it's influence. The US and this powerhouse have had a decades-long arrangement, oil for protection. But in recent years, the balance has started shifting. They've built stronger ties with other rising powers, and even started trading oil in currencies other than the dollar. That might not sound like much, but if that trend grows, it could shake the very foundation of the US economy. You'd be shocked how much global confidence in the US dollar comes from oil being priced in it. Break that link? Suddenly, American money might not stretch as far as it used to. And then there's their role in regional politics. Saudi Arabia isn't just an oil nation, it's a strategic player in the Middle East. Their influence touches everything from global Islamic diplomacy to military balance across the region. If they walk away from US alignment, other forces will rush in to fill the gap, and not all of them are friendly. What happens if they cut military deals with US rivals? Or stop sharing intelligence on key threats? These aren't what-ifs. These are real conversations already happening in high-level rooms. So the next time you fill up your car or check your heating bill, remember who's really holding the dial. One move from them, and America starts sweating. Let's move on. Number 7. India. It might surprise you, but the next global giant the US cannot afford to lose is also the world's most populous country. With over 1.4 billion people, India is rapidly becoming one of the most influential players on the world stage. Why does that matter to the US? Because India isn't just big, it's strategic. Geographically, it sits at the heart of Asia. Economically, it's one of the fastest-growing major economies on Earth. And militarily, it's becoming a serious force, with a defense budget that ranks in the global top 5. But here's what's wild. India is also home to one of the largest tech workforces on the planet. Nearly 75% of the world's IT outsourcing market flows through Indian firms. US companies, from startups to Fortune 500s, rely heavily on Indian talent, infrastructure, and innovation. What happens if those pipelines dry up? Think customer service waits are long now? Imagine your entire tech department grinding to a halt. Your cloud services, your app updates, your cybersecurity, all delayed or disrupted. And there's more. India is a key counterweight to rising global rivals. Its cooperation with the US in defense trade and technology helps stabilize Asia's power balance. But if India shifts its allegiance, or decides to stay neutral in conflicts that matter to Washington, that could tip the scales in ways we're not prepared for. They also have their eyes on becoming a global leader in semiconductor manufacturing, green energy, and space exploration. If the US loses that partnership, other nations will swoop in and tighten their grip on tomorrow's tech. But guess what? India doesn't owe the US anything. It's carving its own path, and if America wants to stay close, it needs to work for it. That's why this relationship is no longer a nice-to-have. It's a must-keep. And if India ever turns its back, the consequences would echo far beyond the tech world. Now, before we move to the next global heavyweight, hit that subscribe button. It helps us keep bringing you the facts, the insight, and the stories that other people aren't telling. Trust us, you don't want to miss what's next. What does a country with no oceans, no oil fields, and no nuclear weapons have that the US can't live without? You're about to find out. Number 6. Germany. What happens when a quiet powerhouse at the center of Europe makes a move? It doesn't fire missiles. It doesn't shake its fist. It just shifts gears, and the global economy rumbles. That's what makes Germany so dangerously essential to the US. You'd be shocked to learn how much the American economy relies on a country with no major oil reserves, no oceans, and no nuclear stockpile. But Germany is the largest economy in Europe and the third largest exporter in the world. From cars to chemicals to high-precision machinery, chances are something you own has German engineering at its core. And that's just the surface. Germany is the financial engine of the European Union, which together accounts for more than $1 trillion in trade with the US every year. But if Berlin changes direction, the whole EU could pivot away from Washington and closer to new global players. But guess what? That's not the most dangerous part. Germany is also home to Ramstein Air Base, a critical hub for US military operations across Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. Lose that base, and the US loses a strategic springboard in multiple regions. And here's a twist. Germany is leading Europe's push for green energy, AI innovation, and digital sovereignty. If the US falls out of step with Berlin's future plans, it could be left out of the next industrial revolution. What happens if Germany grows tired of balancing between the US and its own regional interests? What if trade disputes deepen or political rifts widen? It won't take missiles. It'll take meetings, policy shifts, and economic cold shoulders. And the impact? It'll be felt in American factories, tech firms, and global strategy tables. This is more than friendship. It's a vital alliance that powers much more than we see on the surface. Number 5. Japan. Now picture a country smaller than California, but with a grip on the future so strong, losing it could set the US back by decades. The country? Japan. This island nation is more than sushi and cherry blossoms. Japan is a technology titan, a top US trade partner, and home to over 100 Fortune Global 500 companies. From advanced robotics to microchips, Japan builds the tech that powers the world's innovation. You'd be shocked to know that over 30% of global semiconductor materials are produced there. But here's where it gets critical. Japan is also one of America's strongest military allies in the Indo-Pacific. Hosting nearly 54,000 US troops, Japan is the shield in one of the most volatile regions on Earth. If this partnership crumbles, the entire balance of power in Asia could tip dangerously fast. And while Japan rarely stirs global drama, don't mistake that silence for weakness. It's the third largest economy in the world, and every move it makes sends ripples through Wall Street, Silicon Valley, and beyond. What happens if Japan takes a more independent path, or grows weary of footing the bill for regional security? That could leave America stretched thin and open the door for rising challengers to step in. Japan is investing in AI, renewable tech, and next-gen manufacturing, and the US needs that momentum to stay ahead. Without Japan's input, the innovation race could slip into someone else's hands. So if you think this alliance is just about old war treaties and business deals, think again. It's about the future, and it's a future America cannot afford to lose. Now, before we jump into the next nation on this list, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It fuels us to keep digging into the facts that mainstream media often skips. And trust us, what's next might surprise you. It's a country you might associate with K-pop, drama series, and fast internet. But what if we told you this tech-savvy nation holds one of America's biggest modern lifelines? London remains one of the world's top financial hubs, controlling trillions in global assets. A shift in UK economic policy, toward rivals or away from the dollar, could send Wall Street into a tailspin. But guess what? The UK isn't just about banks and spies. It's also home to critical defense infrastructure, including nuclear capabilities and joint operations with US forces around the globe. From submarine bases to aircraft carriers, Britain is more than just a partner. It's a force multiplier. And as one of the most influential voices in NATO and the United Nations, the UK's diplomatic sway keeps coalitions tight. If that voice ever turned away from Washington, it wouldn't just be symbolic. It would fracture global unity on everything from military action to climate agreements. Here's what's wild. The UK is also redefining its post-Brexit role. It's signing new trade deals, exploring global alliances, and carving its own path. If the US doesn't stay in sync, it could find itself left behind by its oldest and most capable ally. Don't let the history fool you. Alliances must be earned, even the closest ones. And if the UK ever walks away, America won't just lose a friend, it could lose a cornerstone. Number 1, Turkey. This next country doesn't get nearly enough attention, but one wrong move from them could block US access to entire regions. That country is Turkey. You'd be surprised how much this crossroads nation influences global military operations. Sitting between Europe and the Middle East, Turkey controls the Bosporus Strait, one of the most important maritime routes on the planet. If access is denied, it could cripple NATO's ability to move forces between seas. But it gets deeper. Turkey hosts Incirlik Air Base, a strategic hub for US missions in the Middle East. Without it, the US would lose quick response capabilities in some of the world's most volatile zones. And here's the real shocker. Turkey is a NATO member, yet increasingly charts an independent course, buying defense systems from Russia, negotiating deals with Iran, and striking its own tone on global issues. If they pull further away from Western influence, that could weaken NATO from within. They're also becoming a rising player in the global drone and defense tech industry, building tools that other countries, including US allies, are starting to rely on. If Turkey decides to shift its alliances completely, it won't just hurt American power, it could empower America's rivals. Economically, Turkey connects Europe to Asia, and it's a growing trade partner in energy, agriculture, and tech. A political or economic pivot could reroute global supply chains overnight. What if Turkey limits US access to key operations? What if it joins with powers outside the Western sphere? These aren't hypotheticals. They're scenarios already unfolding. Don't underestimate this country. It may not always make headlines, but if Turkey steps away, the US would feel it immediately, on the battlefield, in the markets, and at the negotiation table. If this opened your eyes, then help us keep going. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, and share it with someone who needs to understand how global power really works. Because this isn't just international politics, it's personal. And the more we know, the better prepared we are. Thanks for watching.